Hello, hello! Jeff Helvin here with Ballen Brands, and today I'm excited to share with you one of the best tools we developed for our business, and that tool is Autopilot ISA. Now, Autopilot ISA is a follow-up and nurture campaign built in Infusionsoft to aggressively pursue new leads and keep in touch with existing leads automatically. Now, the reason why we developed this system is we've mastered the ability to generate leads, and we do so at a high volume. And what happens is we now don't have the proper time and attention to pursue these leads. Most of us here in this business that we work in, when we have a lot of leads, we're really talking to the ones that are talking to us. But the ones that aren't talking to us doesn't mean that they don't want to do business with us. It just may mean that they're not ready yet. So it's important to us to find a way to continue to keep in touch with these leads, to get them to respond, and then after they do respond, of course, to keep in touch with them until they're ready to do a transaction. So in this example, we're using real estate as the sample here, and real estate transactions can take quite some time. So what we're doing here is we have the campaign, the Autopilot ISA campaign is actually a three-part campaign. And there's an arrival campaign, a survival campaign, and a revival. So let me just show you a little bit about what each of those do here. So the arrival campaign is really meant just to chase new leads aggressively for 90 days with the single purpose of achieving a response. So on here you'll see we actually have an email sequence and a text sequence that goes out, and each of these has its own path that it follows based on the time of day and what day of the week that it's going to send out. Now in the first week we send multiple, at least daily text messages and emails every day. And after that first week, if they still have not responded, then it's going to go to a 1-week sequence for the rest of 90 days. Now, one of the keys to this, of course, is the text messaging factor, because a lot of people are responding via text message. And those that do respond to email are actually responding because we embed actionable links in the system for them to be able to actually click on and give us a response, rather than having to click the reply button and then typing out a message to us. So we see that this really helps our engagement quite a bit. Now once they do engage, then two-way contact is achieved and this campaign stops automatically. And from there we have a decision to make on what we're going to do with that lead. So if the lead responded that they're interested in working with us but they're not ready yet, well then that's a perfect example of why we want to put them on the survival campaign. The survival campaign will actually pursue them. It sends a message about every 3 weeks from you that indicates or talks to them, I should say, about what you're working towards. So in this case, if it's a buyer, then we might ask them things such as, are you interested in HOA or no HOA, or what you're communicating to your agent may, regardless of when you're buying, what you communicate to your agent now could help you save money. Things like that. So we're trying to really reach out to them from a place of value. Not necessarily, hey, when can we meet? When are you ready to buy? Nothing that's that aggressive to them. It's simply keeping in touch and offering our assistance. Now, after that 12 months, let's just say maybe they stop responding to you. We're sending a message every few weeks and suddenly they fall off. So what we can do now is we can put them on the revival campaign. And the revival campaign turns it up a little bit and gets aggressive again. So in this case, it's a 7-day touch, again, based on how they responded to us originally. And it's very aggressive and just, again, don't ignore me, please respond, is really all we're after here. So from here, all we're trying to do is let them know that, look, we're not forgetting about you, so just go ahead and let us know. If you don't want to do business, that's okay too. But we don't want you to be silent. We want to understand what that is. So by having this, it allows us to spend more time on the leads that are communicating with us regularly and less time chasing those that may not yet be ready to do business. A lot of times it doesn't even mean they're not interested, it just means they're not ready yet. So in order to kind of prove that example, I wanted to pull this graph up for us here. And this is a sample size of just over 1,700 responses. And 77% of the responses did respond to the first 3 text messages. Now, in my experience when talking with agents across the nation, what I find out is that really after those first few touches, those first few attempts, we tend to forget about them. We move on, we're too busy, we don't have time to continue to text message, and so forth. So what's interesting about this fact is that, although 77% respond in the first few messages, there's still another 23% that respond after most of us would have already given up on them. That's a pretty important stat to look at. So the other thing that's important is that this is 21 text messages that go out over the course of 90 days. And if you look at this, every one of these text messages is accounted for. So there are literally people who ignored us, email after text, after email, after text, after email for 90 days, and finally would respond, for example, to the last text message that we send to them. So that's a pretty incredible, finding there as well, because this really tells us that it's not that they don't exist, it's not that they're bad information even, it's not necessarily anything other than the fact that they're just not ready to do business with us yet. So some of the keys to success here and why this works is really the persistence of follow-up. As I mentioned, if we don't continue, and as this chart shows, that people will respond at many different stages of correspondence. And again, these are all people that didn't respond. So if they responded to the 15th text, that means they didn't respond to the 14 before that we sent them. So it's a pretty amazing finding there, like I said. One of the other ones is the key to the messages that provoke the engagement. So again, reaching out saying, hey, I'm here to help. Hey, when do you want to connect? Hope you're doing well, things like that. Although they're friendly and certainly not too aggressive, they're also not really offering anything of value. And so the messages that we use here, it's important to kind of ask them, how do you feel about the properties you're finding? Do you care about HOAs or not HOAs? Or, are you interested in purchasing 30, 60, 90 days? What's your timeline? Things like that. This is what's getting them to engage and help us understand where they're at in the process. And really the last key to success here is just outlasting anyone else. As we know, these buyers and sellers might have input information on a few different websites, for example, in this case for cold web leads. And if that's the case, well, then they might get a message, especially automated. There's a lot of automation tools today. They might get messages right away in the first few minutes that says, hey, I'd love to connect. When's a good time? Again, something like that, they may not respond to because maybe they're not ready to connect. They could be a year out still from even considering a purchase. So what this allows us to do is we continue to follow up, and we have the persistence. And by the time someone's responding to the 13th or 14th message, anybody else that's been reaching out to them, especially if it's manual, has more than likely stopped, and therefore we're the last man standing. So these are the things that we find extremely valuable. We increased our two-way contact rate by over 100%, from down below 20% in some cases, depending on where the leads were generated, to over 50% in a lot of cases. So this is a pretty significant detail and number, and what the system can do is really increase. It's all a numbers game that we're working here, and this system really helps us increase our chances of closing another transaction. So if you have any questions on this, please, by all means, reach out to us. You can email us at team@ballenbrands.com or visit the website at ballenbrands.com, and we look forward to speaking with you.